Righty, so back to the agenda now. So consideration of urgent business, and then we've got a couple of minor nature. So look, I sent something around to you last night, and this is partly on around doing things better, and I think we've well traversed today the the escalations that sit within our contracts, and we haven't looked specifically at a review of how we do some of our services for some time. The reason why I aimed at the likes of analysis to begin with at some trades was it's just an easy enough place to start, and I know there's other places as well that we can do it, but I'm sort of envisaging that we've been in a model that we've been paying contractors, and maybe it's the model that will be in place for years to come, but we haven't reviewed it properly. And I think by at least doing some analysis initially over some of the basics, whether it's sitting in R&M, and I'm talking not specifically to capital projects, and then moving to other things. I know we've considered legal cost in-house versus external, and I've talked to Bede around that. What are some of the considerations? But we could certainly look at that, and is there the ability to have in-house legal? But it's not just a numbers game. It's probably some in-depth analysis to go, and look, probably the longer picture of what I'm thinking is, if Three Waters does fall over, we do have to do things differently. There will be an opportunity across the councils to look at the way we offer services in Three Waters. There's a lot of councils out there that do contracting themselves. What should we be looking at doing in-house versus the contracting model? So I do want this to be a continued and wider conversation, but initially I want to sort of council to be on board with us starting the conversation and doing some analysis across some of these things, and that really starts to pick at basically some of the invoicing that we're doing across some of the trades. As an example, what are we spending in R&M across our property portfolio? Is there a better way to do that? Also, it ties with levels of service and some of the complaints that we get, in around CBD maintenance and things like that. Is there a better model that we can be looking at rather than just sitting out there with Fulton Hogan and other providers? And also, I think it's a nice signal for us to send to the contractor market that actually we're reviewing some of these things, because we're looking at massive escalations. And I talked to some of you about, and I know those that are in business, you look at those opportunities to increase and gain some margin yourself. So you can't tell me that the current environment that we've been in for the last 2 years, that others aren't profiting. Not to say that you shouldn't profit, because I'm not against that, but government and local government are easy for business to make significant money out of. So I just think we should look harder at how we're providing some of these services. So look, I'm happy to open for conversation and happy to give more clarity. I think there's a bit of an email trail last night on some points. So yeah, we'll open the floor to some discussion, and happy to take comment from Bede as well. Thanks, Kevin.
And what you're thinking is the council would employ an arborist instead of employing a contracted arborist, and if it would be a lower cost, obviously, and those sorts of things. So that's the nuts and bolts.
No, totally. Look,
yes.
and basically that model's existed since probably the late 80s when reform happened. Not to say we're going to get any better outcomes, but I think we need to do that analysis. And if I look at good governance practice and some of the things that we're actually here for, we should be looking at costs. And if you look at all the issues that we're discussing and the reason why we ended up choosing 13.3, can we do it better? And I think we wouldn't be doing our job properly if we couldn't do some analysis. And I'm sure Bede can speak to more detail on how that might work. But there's I look at a tender as an example for a for the landfill, building a new cell. $1 million, yes, there's technical ability. I'm not taking away from that, but is there a better way to deliver? And if we're not considering it, then we don't know. No different to the likes of our example at Peel Forest Landfill. Is the right model to just put that out to tender and contract, or should we be considering other options? So, yeah. So, Councillor Pinnington, thanks. Yeah.
How would you envisage we did it, Nigel? Because that's a massive piece of work that you really have to get right.
Totally. Yeah, and that's why I think starting small and looking for the opportunities and a bit of a rolling tiered approach would make sense. I don't know if we'd get all the work done, and I know that some things are in. I don't envisage us selling our own roads, but some of these things and we've got skill set sitting around this governance table. We've got skill set sitting around our CCO table in contracting and other space that I think would help us consider. So, what I'm thinking is a tiered rolling approach. So we'll be in a position where LTP time you could make some other considerations around how levels of service are provided. And I know one of the things, as an example, Parks and Rec is doing a review around how we're providing service there. And I think, Andrew, is that due to come April, May, something like that, for discussion back with council, roughly? I think that's what Bill said. And so, so we're... Yes, yeah. So this is just the start of that process. But Bede might be able to talk to some of how it might realistically work.
So thank you, Your Worship. So to the Mayor's point, it goes, I think, in a number of tiers. And one of the things, I suppose, what you're wanting is some assurance that the model we use to procure and then deliver services is optimising the best spend of the money. Now, part of it will be it's quite a small way, but still a valid way, where when we go back and look at some of the questions we've had raised today on the annual plan, making sure that we can justify those numbers or they're altered and we show you what they are. And so part of it is actually scrutinising for prudential standards and good probity that the spend is good. But there's also then the procurement and the way we actually procure a service or a good and then deliver it. Have we optimised and have we got the best model? Now, to your point, Councillor Piddington, there's a process called a Section 17A that we have to undertake every 6 years, I think, Andrew? 6 years? Yeah, every 6 years, where we look at their various services and activities and how they're delivered. So there is something of a model there. It's fair to say that with some of the sort of increase in sophistication that we're getting with our financial reporting, we can now do more thorough interrogation of how that is happening. But it is also about the procurement, and we're looking at how we're doing that as well. So we are developing some of those skills in-house and capability and capacity to go and do that. And so we can come back and work and demonstrate, I suppose, the process and the outcomes of that. It's certainly not an overnight piece of work, but like all pieces of work, it starts a bit like an acorn and it grows from there. A relatively small targeted piece of work, and we will expand it from there. Did you want to add to that, Andrew?
Yeah, we are constantly looking at the most efficient ways to procure work and get the best price. And yeah, there are many different models we use. But in some areas in roading, we are confined to particular rules around Waka Kotahi, have rules around procurement. But yeah, it is an issue. So lowest price is not necessarily the best option in all cases, because that can be a race to the bottom, and then we'll end up with contractors cutting corners, substandard work, as we have experienced in some cases. So it is a delicate balance, but it's certainly an area that we are constantly watching. And we also watch others as well around the country.
Yeah, look, and I agree, and I think I agree you are constantly reviewing. I think what's missing though is we haven't considered doing it ourselves. And I know that's challenging, sometimes a step too far for some, but I think it's something that we should be considered. Councillor Burt.
We don't have to go very far to find out whether it's worth doing ourselves. Just go to Ashburton and look at their CCO, look at Christchurch City Council and their CCOs, go to some other comparable ones around the country, bearing in mind that we would have to pay the setup costs for anything that looked like what we needed to do ourselves, and then go out there and wash its own face, make itself available not just to our work, because it wouldn't survive just on that, but to a wider group of people, and be competent and competitive. We'll be looking to move it on as quickly as possible, like others have in the past, I think.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I'm probably of the same opinion. I've seen CCOs come and go, it means buying a whole lot of capital equipment, and then hiring people, and I guess we should probably be trying to reduce the people, and I guess it would mean probably putting more resources into ensuring we are we're monitoring and getting our contracts out in a good, competent way. I guess the big numbers for me that are sticking out at the moment are our use of consultants, and our personnel charges have doubled. So those are the things, when you put those things together, we need probably we need to probably put some efforts into our HR department and ensure we're getting the right people for the right positions who are confident in what they do, and try and cut those consultants out, because those, when you're talking about the cost of having someone work for you, the bits and pieces you require for them to use, I just see it would be a big spiral to nowhere. But certainly the easy numbers for me are those consultancy numbers where we have someone in-house, we pay $100 an hour or $75 an hour, and when we have a consultant, we're paying between $300 and $400 probably per hour.
One of the issues is getting the staff, I have to say. We have been looking for a stormwater team leader and a stormwater engineer for the last 6 months or more, in fact almost a year now. We cannot find those people, they're not there. So that forces us to use the consultants. But the other point I'll make with consultants is a lot of those used in capital work, and over the last 2 years we've gone from 35 million to 75 million. So yes, the consultant costs will increase because we're doing more work.
I would just note that look at our rate increase versus those ones that actually do have CCOs sitting within them doing some of this contracting work. We're a lot higher than they are. So, part of this process is around doing that analysis. So, I'm not saying there are savings, but I think we would be foolish not to look hard. And that includes, Alan, to your point, consultancy, and I'll get B to talk to the legal side of things and review.
Yeah, so one of the areas is if we take, for instance, legal fees, and so do we get a legal counsel in? And I mentioned this to the mayor. So in some areas, for instance, we have already got a couple of legally trained people on the team. One of them being the director of engagement and culture, and she's currently on parental leave. But it does make a difference to have a person who is expert in that area of law. Now, the risk of getting a legal person in, a general counsel, is that all they really end up doing is working the brief that goes to another lawyer, because there's so many areas of expertise that are required. Whether it's in building, it's different to the ones that are required in resource management, which are different to the ones required for Lagoima, and different again to the ones required for HR issues or health and safety. And so you can end up just employing somebody who's a very expensive clearinghouse, when in actual fact the group managers or myself feel that we are better to tightly control that. So that's where we look at how do we maximise and get the best value, as opposed to just engaging an in-house legal counsel where often you do need quite high-end expertise. And again, construction contracts would be another one where you'd have to employ a lawyer, and to get somebody with those skills who had a really broad remit and was able to make a significant, provide significant and reliable, timely advice, I think we'd find that we'd be just about paying a very, very high rate. Or we'd quickly find we want 2 or 3 because their work grows. So that's the sort of issue we would want to look at. I don't think it ever hurts for us to go and look at ourselves and make sure we're getting really good value for money when you're having to go to the community and say, here's a big increase. So I think as officers, we're pretty comfortable to be, and in fact, we'll invite that opportunity to go and examine whether we are in actual fact delivering really good value. But we just point that out. What I wouldn't want is to engage a lawyer and then all of a sudden find we need 2 because they're just busy clearing out advice to a whole heap of other people. And we do make at times decisions about the risk we will wear around certain areas and don't get legal advice.
Yeah, and I guess the question around though, we know what our legal costs are, so actually a legal team of 2 or 3 might make sense and still be a significant savings. So,
Could be.
But the thing is, if we don't do the analysis, then we won't know. So, yeah. So look, we don't actually need a decision. I thought it was worth bringing in urgent business as such. So you're comfortable with a direction to do some work on that? Yeah, and we'll come back. And I'll just work with the Chief Executive on that. Any further discussion before we move to minor nature? No, so we have